if you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Trump was shot at rally. Things that a week ago seemed like a conspiracy theory suddenly, once again, became a reality. On July 13, 2024, at 6 p.m., a rally of U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump began in the town of Butler, located about 40 kilometers from Pittsburgh. These events, like all previous ones, had to be held according to the standard scenario. Trump is pushing a speech, the audience is listening to him, autographs are being signed, photographs are being taken, and the event finishing with a big traffic jam, because about 50,000 people came to this rally. All started as usual. Trump took the stage, waved to the crowd, and began his speech. 6 minutes later, he started talking about the illegal border crossings during Joe Biden's presidency, when suddenly a shot rang out. Trump grabbed his right ear with his hand and began to slide under the podium. Conspiracy theory has become a reality. Over the past couple of years, Trump's supporters have repeatedly said that if the situation gets out of control, he could be killed. How this happens is not important. The main thing is to eliminate the competitor. Once again, this was loudly stated by the famous journalist Tucker Carlson, who in May, in response to the court's decision to find Trump guilty in the case of forgery of financial documents, wrote the following: "This will not stop Trump. He will win the election unless he is killed."
So if you begin with criticism, then you go to protest, then you go to impeachment, now you go to indictment, and none of them work, what's next? I mean, graph it out, man. We're speeding toward assassination.
Before that, for several years, an American journalist had repeatedly feared for the life of the 45th President of the United States in his broadcasts. And there were reasons to be afraid, because since 2015, Trump and his supporters have been under constant pressure from the state and the establishment, which is now commonly called the deep state. In the next video we'll tell you more, but basically, deep state is like the old Soviet-style Central Committee, but with law enforcement and unelected officials that have been in power for decades. Because they're so unremovable and independent, they've been able to build close connections with each other and accumulate a lot of political power in the U.S. system. Trump has been called a populist for nothing. The word populist in American society, unlike in European society, has never been a swear word. On the contrary, a populist in America is a politician who speaks in the interests of the people and relies primarily on the people and not on elite groups, corporations, or government agencies, which is what almost all American presidents have sinned. So what is the problem, you may ask? It's very simple. Trump was an uncontested president. In 2016, he won on a wave of popular outrage and hype when the rusty gears of the democratic mechanism suddenly turned around, and instead of an established politician from Washington, we got a popular guy who promised to make America great again and fix the corrupt system. That didn't sit well with some people. This was followed by a campaign of sabotage, when all the decisions of the president were stalled and shelved by federal bureaucrats, as well as a campaign of harassment. For the past decade, Hollywood has pulled out dozens of movies and TV shows where the main negative character has always been a hero resembling Donald Trump. It was rarely mentioned directly in the movies, but the collective image was always red. But the real damage to democracy wasn't in the movies, it was in the news. All media corporations attacked Trump, celebrities cursed him, and experts talked about how bad he was, and so on and so forth. So, the Americans have created a situation in the US that reminds me of the Russian Empire in the early 1900s and the USSR in the 1920s and 30s. In the first case, all the media and stars stigmatized and humiliated the monarchy, for which they then paid a great price. In the second case, they waged a desperate struggle against Trotsky, and at the same time Bukharin, Zinoviev, Kamenev, other Leninists, and the Old Guard. As a result, all these individuals and their supporters were put against the wall and then buried at the Kommunarka. Some of them managed to escape, but during the sprint some stumbled and their heads fell on the ice axe. Let's hope that the United States will take this into account, although the latest news says otherwise. As a result, we have a situation of information harassment in the society of heavily loaned and well-armed religious neurotics who were stripped to their underwear twice in the 21st century in 2008, and then in 2021. What do you think such people can do in such an information bubble? You can probably find the answer at American schools, specifically in Columbine. Once under the podium, Secret Service agents fell on Trump. Meanwhile, shots were already being fired. Apparently, the shooter was desperate and decided to empty the entire magazine in the hope of hitting the Republican devil. Unfortunately, the bullets hit, but not the presidential candidate, but ordinary people. One person died, 2 others are in critical condition. The victim was 50-year-old Corey Comparator, a design engineer who was also the head of a volunteer fire brigade for many years. According to his family and the Pennsylvania governor, Josh Shapiro, he shielded his daughters from gunfire with his body. The shooter also found his leaden girlfriend, who smeared his skull and left him lying on the roof of a building standing just 150 meters in front of the podium where Trump was speaking. The shooter was Thomas Matthew Crooks, 20 years old guy whose identity was confirmed by American security forces using biometrics and DNA. We know very little about him. According to media reports, it is known that he was an ordinary quiet boy who was fond of shooting and had windy political preferences because at first he was for Republicans and then Democrats. So he was basically just another average, boring American. Maybe he saw a lot of media propaganda and decided to become the savior of America, or maybe he just wanted attention. Who knows? It doesn't matter. Something else is important. A guy with a sniper rifle was able to take a position at a distance of 150 meters from the former U.S. president and the current candidate, aim, fire a series of shots and injure this candidate. Moreover, the FBI found a bag with explosives in the Matthews car, so Trump apparently got off lightly. Well, how is this even possible in the USA, the most developed country on the planet, with a dozen intelligence agencies and security services, the Patriot Act that allowed to monitor your phones and emails? In a country with total control over its citizens and police abuse, how such failure could happen? Especially when you consider the fact that before the rally, several people approached the police and said that a strange man was climbing on the roof, but they were just brushed off. The picture becomes clearer when you suddenly remember that the Secret Service is a federal service that reports to Washington, that is, the same deep state. The time of the assassination is also interesting. The shots rang out 2 weeks after Trump's success in the election debates and just 2 days before the start of the Republican National Convention, at which Trump will be officially elected as a presidential candidate. Plus, on July 14th, the day after the assassination attempt, Bastille Day is celebrated in America. It is believed that on this day the Great French Revolution started, which gave the French people democracy, freedom, human rights, freedom from the tyranny of the monarch, as well as 10 years of revolutionary terror during which several 100,000 people were guillotined, and of course 25 years of endless wars that claimed the lives of about 10 million people and turned France into ruins. Apparently, the boy with the rifle decided to make a gift to all mankind on this bloody day and rid it of the so-called tyrant. The Secret Service, in turn, decided not to bother him and turned a blind eye to the strange boy on the roof, because he could hammering nails into this roof with a rifle. Moreover, the roof was located outside the perimeter of the rally, so it wasn't in the area of responsibility of the Secret Service. Either there was no boy who was identified only by DNA, and the real shooter is lying somewhere in a ditch with cut throat to keep him quiet. In any case, it was a total failure of the special services. From the point of view of protection, they committed negligence and, as a result, an act of terrorism. From the point of view of the deep state, Trump survived, so a failure on the face. There is also a third point. This action was supposed to scare Trump so that he would stop the race, but he's not the timid type. When the shelling stopped, and the Secret Service agents clung to Trump from all sides, he stood up so that his bloody face could be seen, raised his fist, and shouted, "Fight!" The agents began to take him off the stage, but Trump resisted and shouted "Fight," to which the audience responded with cheers and slogans USA and Trump. It is clear that he will go to the end. It is also clear that America is finally sliding into the abyss. We live in an incredible time. Time seems to be shrinking, and what used to be considered conspiracy is now becoming a terrible reality. Just last week, statements about the possible assassination of Trump were ridiculed. Today Trump does not have half an ear. At this rate, the impossible and conspiratorial Second Civil War in the United States has become closer to us than we thought. The shot on July 13, 2024, in terms of its significance, may be comparable only to the shot on June 28, 1914. 100 years ago, a murder in Sarajevo led to a great war on the European continent. A successful assassination on Trump, in turn, could already escalate to a great American Civil War. That could lead to exchange of nuclear strikes between the Democratic Confederation and the Union of Republican States, which we will talk about in our next video. Thanks for watching. Put likes, write comments, and subscribe to the channel to understand the brutal politics.